Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer McLeod. I'm the judge in this case. Are both parties ready to proceed?
After a few preliminary matters.
Okay. Before we go over the preliminary matters, let me go over the instructions. I'm going to apologize if you hear anything. It's puppies, so I don't want that to throw anybody off. I will try to mute. They should go to sleep pretty soon. Okay. Let's see. Just want to remind everybody that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs. We know this is live streaming. You guys have agreed to this. Just a reminder, there's no recesses that will be allowed in this mock trial unless there's a health emergency. If that happens, just let me know. Just a reminder for teams and coaches that any disputes arising out of this competition may be reported in accordance with must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. The teams, you must comply with the time requirements. That will be considered in the scoring of the individual performances. I just want to make sure there's nobody else in the room with each one of you. Okay. And just a reminder, this is video. You may stay seated. You can stand if you want to. It's your preference. It won't take off your score if you do either one. Do any of the panelists have any conflicts or bias against either one of the teams that I should know about?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to swear in each group. Please raise your right hand. And if everybody can switch on their cameras, I'd appreciate it, including the panelists. Okay. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I can see that everybody has either said yes or nodded their head. Thank you. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your
Yes,
Honor.
Your Honor.
Thank you. Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts and procedures and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, let's introduce each each roster. Let's start with the prosecution. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Olivia Dalfolo Daly. I am attorney number 2, and I will provide the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes and the cross-examination of Professor Blake Van Owen. I will also give the opening statement.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury, my name is Jaylee Hepner. I am providing the direct examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz and the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins. I am the first attorney.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury, my name is Zoe Mans Jackson. I'll be the third attorney on behalf of the prosecution. I'll be directing Kyle Kuzak and crossing Avery Becker, as well as delivering the closing argument. Our witnesses will now introduce themselves.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury, my name is Eleanor Briggs, and I am Detective Jordan Markowitz, your first prosecution witness today.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury, I am Samuel Kruzlik, and I'm Alex Cifuentes, your second witness.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury, my name is Peter Briggs. I am Kyle Kuzak, and I will be the third witness today.
Okay, will the defense please introduce their attorneys and their witnesses?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Paige Miller. I will be doing the cross-examination of Detective Markowitz, the direct examination of Avery Becker, and conducting the closing argument.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Kenzie Fergus, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Taylor Perkins, as well as the cross-examination of Alex Cifuentes.
I'm having a difficulty hearing you, Miss. How do you pronounce your last name? Fergus? Yes. Can you speak up or adjust your mic or get closer?
This normally happens when more than 2 people have their cameras on. It should fix itself once.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for knowing the technology. I appreciate that. Go ahead.
Good evening, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. I am Victoria Johnston, and today I'll be conducting the direct examination of Professor Blake Van Owen, the cross-examination of Kyle Kuzak, as well as performing the opening statement on behalf of the defense. Your Honor, permission for my witnesses to introduce themselves?
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sam Schwecke, and I'll be portraying Avery Becker.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Kitty Wright, and I will be portraying Taylor Perkins.
Ms. Wright, you're also pretty faint. Is there some way to adjust your mic? Or is this something, a similar situation where more than 2 cameras are on, that there's difficulty?
Has there been any change? I tried to change my microphone.
Is anybody else having difficulty hearing her?
She's very faint.
Okay. Well, Ms. Wright, let's do this. Why don't you work on that and I'll come back to you and everybody else can continue to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Annalise Schwecke, and I will be portraying Blake Van Owen.
Your Honor, is there any significant change in my audio?
I'm not sure if it's any better. When do you go up next? For the defense.
I portray Taylor Perkins.
Taylor Perkins. So it will be a little while before you proceed. So maybe you could work on your audio and we'll test it again.
Yes, Your Honor, I will be working on that.
Okay, I just don't want to throw anybody off. So, but it looks like we have a little time. Okay, so let's have the lead prosecutor and lead defense attorney on video so I can talk to you. Okay. So we have Miss Miller for the defense, is that correct? And then Miss
Yes, Your Honor.
DeFolo Daly
Yes, Your
for the
Honor.
prosecution. Okay. So are there any preliminary matters?
Yes. For virtual competition, may we consider the stipulations and our trial roster published to the jury, opposing counsel, and Your Honor?
Yes.
When we introduce exhibits under Rule of the Competition 7.4, we will direct the witness to the exhibit for authenticity and accuracy, ask for admission, and if admitted, publish by screen share. That procedure complies with the rule.
Yes.
The prosecution is ready for trial, Your Honor.
Miss Miller, any preliminary matters for you and your team?
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
And do you both have it? Each team has their own timekeeper, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so you've already
Yes, Your
worked
Honor.
out the time, how you like to have the time. Okay. Okay. So, Miss
Delfolo
Daly,
Yes.
would you like to proceed with your opening?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. Avery dealt with the devil and got burned. The defendant, angry at his coach for the loss of his mock trial dream, broke into the victim's house to trash it. The burglary went tragically wrong when the victim appeared armed with a knife. A struggle followed, and what started as a prank ended with the coach dead on the floor in a pool of blood. On the shoulders of the prosecution rests the burden of proof, to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty. Avery is charged with murder in the first degree, felony murder, and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. Avery unlawfully and knowingly broke into a home with the intent to commit criminal mischief, to play a prank. In those course of events, Mackenzie Brockman was stabbed in the back with the very knife he held to defend himself from the intruder. To meet that burden of proof, you'll hear from 3 prosecution witnesses. First, Detective Jordan Markowitz, lead detective and expert in this case. Detective Markowitz will place Avery at the scene and time of the crime through cell tower data, a field she is an expert in. Detective Markowitz will also detail how she determined Avery being the culprit, including motive. Next, you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes, who is Avery's friend and fellow teammate. Cifuentes will show you all the rising tensions between Avery and Brockman, the victim. From Avery's bad habits to vandalism to text messages where Avery threatens to do exactly what happened. Finally, there's Kyle Kuzak, who's a crime scene reconstruction expert who will walk you through exactly what happened during Mackenzie Brockman's murder. The defense will present 3 witnesses of their own. Listen to the cross-examination of these witnesses. You'll hear from Taylor Perkins, who is Avery's best friend and loyal to a fault. Taylor will tell of Avery's strained relationship with the victim. Taylor has done many things for Avery, like quitting mock trial, skipping school, and now alibying Avery. Taylor has saved Avery before and is trying to do so again. Then Blake Van Owen, an ex-police officer and paid witness who only ever testifies for the defense. Van Owen offers nothing more than assumptions of her own. Van Owen offers a suspect who is vaguely linked to the victim rather than the direct connection Avery has. Finally, there's Avery Becker, the defendant. Avery was a student on the mock trial team under late coach Mackenzie Brackman. Hostility was high between the two, and Avery often lashed out, whether it be storming out of practice, breaking into and trashing a home. Every mock trial practice, there was various arguing, pranks, heated reactions, and now Mackenzie Brackman is dead. Avery has the means. The defendant trashed a car once before. What's a house now? Avery has the opportunity. The defendant wasn't in school the day of the murder. Avery has the motive. The defendant got mad, and so he trashed a car. Now the defendant got mad again and attempted to trash a home. Why we are here is no light matter. There is a dead body and a bloody knife. This is not a mock trial case students worked on in their free time. This is a prank gone wrong, but every action has its consequences. At the end of the presentation of evidence, my co-counsel Zoe will ask you to find Avery Becker guilty because Avery dealt with the devil and got burned. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see. Is it Miss Miller for the, did I have that right? Yes. Is it Miller?
Miss Johnston, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Let me make sure I have this. I'm trying to read all these sheets. Opening. Okay. Miss Johnston, please proceed with your opening.
Thank you, Your Honor. A chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and the prosecution's case is filled with weak links. In this case, the police's focus on Avery Becker was the weakest link. Avery Becker was looked at before the evidence. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you will find that the detective's case is made up entirely of weak links. You will learn that evidence police gathered was either not used or simply circumstantial. In fact, some of the evidence they used was lost. That is only the first weak link. The second, the witnesses, two who are investigators, the same investigators that rush this entire investigation. And the weakest link of all, the defendant himself, Avery Becker, a young man with a bright future. The case we will present to you today is that of a young man who should be dreaming of all that lies ahead, but instead he's being unfairly accused of murder. Avery Becker is only guilty of one thing, losing his phone. The prosecution's case rests on Avery's past mistakes leading him to murder, but many know that people don't always make the best decisions. That does not mean all people who have ever made a mistake are murderers. Avery Becker is just a boy who made a simple mistake and is now being faced with murder accusations for a crime he did not commit. Avery Becker wanted to end his senior year on a good note, on good terms with the team he had been part of his entirety of high school. Avery Becker made a mistake, and investigators used that as a leverage to find him guilty of murder. Avery Becker, the weakest final link, was looked at before any other suspect, some who might even had more of a motive than himself. First, you will hear from the defendant himself, Avery Becker, who will take the stand to prove to the jury that he's indeed innocent of this crime, and he is simply a young man who would never do anything to jeopardize his entire future. Avery Becker has his whole life ahead of him, a life he wouldn't simply throw away from one club, from one small part of his life. Next, you will hear from witness Taylor Perkins, Avery Becker's close friends. Teenagers tell their best friends everything. Taylor Perkins will testify under oath that she was with Avery Becker on the day the victim was killed, and will be able to tell us where they were on the day of this crime that she knows Avery did not commit. Not only because she was with him the whole day, but also because she knows that her best friend would never commit such an atrocity over a petty feud. And finally, expert witness, Professor Blake Van Owen, who is a professor, private investigator, and an expert witness in police practices. She will be able to give you an expert explanation for disproving evidence claiming to point to Becker, but simply is just speculation, as well as providing a secondary suspect with a strong motive, perhaps even stronger than the defendant himself, that the prosecution refused to look into out of pure negligence. Avery Becker wanted that spot back on the mock trial team. So why would he do something to risk his last chance on that team? Avery Becker simply didn't get along with everyone, and now that could cost him a lot more than it should. The detectives in this case took the first opportunity they saw to find Avery Becker as a suspect and ran with it, without the thought of accepting the rest of the evidence that blatantly shows Avery did not commit this crime. They looked at Avery Becker before looking at the evidence. Avery Becker's only crime was that of just losing his phone. Today, we ask you, the jury, to simply listen to what Mr. Becker has to say and find this man of not committing these crimes. We ask you to look beyond his mistakes and find him not guilty of this heinous crime.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Let's take a second for the panelists to do their work, and then we'll move on to the first witness.
I'm good to go, Your Honor.
Okay, and that is, sorry, let's double check. Okay. Is it, who's for the prosecution with the first witness? Is it?
I am, Your Honor, Hepner.
Okay. I saw somebody else's name up there and I got, sorry, confused.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Please tell me if I'm not fine.
Okay.
So we have Ms. Hepner with Detective Markowitz, who is identified or is portrayed by Ms. Briggs. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So, Ms. Hepner, you may proceed.
The prosecution calls Detective Markowitz to the stand. Ms. Markowitz, please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
What is your occupation?
I'm a Denver Police Department homicide detective with 13 years of experience in the field and 7 years of experience investigating crime scenes.
Do you have any specialized training?
Yes, I have a cell phone technology and forensic data recovery certificate from the American Academy of Law Enforcement. Certification required a 3-day training course and a certification exam.
What did you learn?
How to analyze and obtain cell tower data and cell phone records, or CDRs. I use these to investigate how and when a crime was committed. These records track a phone's connection to a cell tower and the communications to and from the cell phone.
How many times have you used CDRs in your investigation?
I've used them in over 100 cases involving cell phone data records and 50 cases involving cell tower data.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, I offer the witness as an expert in the fields of cell phone, technology, forensic data recovery, and crime scene investigation. Her expertise, training, and education have been shown.
So that was cell phone. Let's just go over that again. The cell phone technology, okay.
Cell phone technology, forensic data recovery.
Okay.
And crime scene investigation.
Defense, do you have any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, I will find Detective Markowitz an expert in those 3 fields.
Is the defendant in the courtroom today?
Yes, if the defendant could please turn their camera on so I could identify them. Yes, the defendant is the young man with the headphones on and short brown hair.
Let the record reflect this witness properly identified the defendant.
So reflected, thank you.
How did the scene look when you arrived?
When I arrived at 2:20 p.m., I came in through the back door and I noticed that the victim was face down and just inside the residence. The murder weapon was next to the victim on the floor. There was blood on the knife, on the victim, and on the floor at the scene.
Please look at exhibits 1 and 5.
Okay.
Please identify them.
1 is the victim laying face down. 3 is a knife wound in his back. And 5 is a picture of the murder weapon as it is seen at the scene.
Are these true and accurate copies?
Yes.
I move to admit exhibits 1 and 5 into evidence as its authenticity and accuracy have been shown.
Defense, do you have any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
Just so I am clear, because this is on video, do you usually put the document up when
Yes,
you're asked before?
I was
You're
about
just-
to do that just now.
Okay, okay. Okay.
Permission for co-counsel to publish by screen share.
Yes, and would you like me to admit those documents into evidence yet?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll admit into evidence exhibits 1, 3, and 5. Proceed, counsel.
What is the significance of these exhibits?
These exhibits show that he was killed by a knife and that knife found at the scene was in fact the murder weapon.
You may stop sharing now, co-counsel. What else did you notice?
I noticed several Ring video cameras around the residence.
Please look at exhibit 10, and can you identify it?
Exhibit 10 shows a devil-masked intruder at the front door.
Is it an accurate copy?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I move to admit exhibit 10 into evidence as its authenticity and accuracy have been shown.
Defense, do you have any
No
objections?
objection.
I'll admit into evidence exhibit 10.
Permission to publish by screen share.
Yes.
Who is behind this devil mask?
Based on the evidence in this investigation, the defendant, Avery Becker.
How did you start your investigation?
After I checked Brackman's ID and saw that he had a mock trial shirt, I found out that he coached mock trial at Colorado High School. I obtained the team members' contacts and first spoke to Alex Cifuentes.
Who is Alex?
Well, in some text messages between Alex and the defendant, Becker admits that they were going to trash the victim's house because the victim wouldn't let him back on the team after Becker vandalized the victim's car.
What did you do then?
Well, when I was unable to interview the defendant, I attempted to look at his phone, but it was allegedly lost. And so instead, I obtained CDRs from the cell phone number and then made a diagram of the records.
I direct your attention to exhibit 16. Do you see it?
Yes, I do.
Please identify it.
This is my cell tower record diagram that shows the communications made to the phone and what cell towers they were made from.
Is it accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to admit exhibit 16 into evidence as its authenticity and accuracy have been shown.
Defense, do you have any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
I'll admit into evidence exhibit 16.
Permission to publish by screen share.
Permission granted.
My co-counsel under Rule 7.4 will now mark on the exhibit while Ms. Markowitz is testifying. What did you find on these CDRs?
I found that the defendant's phone was near the victim's home on the day of the crime and near the time of the crime.
How did you discover this?
Well, another Colorado high school mock trial student, Taylor Perkins, was calling and texting the phone.
What communications were made?
The first communication was made near the home of the defendant at this cell tower. Then, one in the middle of the defendant's home and the victim's home, near this cell tower. Lastly, there was one communication made closest to the victim's home at this cell tower. After this, all communications suddenly stopped.
What was the timeline you concluded?
The defendant left the house around 12:45 or 12:50 p.m. and headed down Rock Creek Parkway to the victim's house. They arrived at the home from 1:05 to 1:17 p.m. when they killed the victim.
Based on the evidence, what happened March 6th?
The defendant, because of the loss of his mock trial dream, broke into the victim's house to trash it. The burglary went tragically wrong when the victim appeared armed with a knife. A struggle followed, and what started as a trashing of the home ended with a coach dead on the floor in a pool of blood.
Based on the evidence, who killed Mackenzie Brackman?
The defendant, Avery Becker.
Why?
Well, in my investigation, I concluded that from the text messages from Alex Fuentes, the fact that Becker was kicked off the team and unable to get back on, the CDR records which showed the phone near the victim's home, the person's build, and the defendant's history of similar acts, as Becker wrote on the car, I concluded that it was the defendant.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Hepner. Ms. Miller, do you have any questions?
No, Your Honor. Or I have a cross-examination.
I'm sorry. Proceed with the cross-examination.
Thank you. Good evening, Detective Markowitz. Let's start with your experience. You have been a detective for 7 years, correct?
I have, yes.
You have specialized training with cell phones?
I do.
This specialized training was a 3-day course, correct?
It was.
Regarding Alex Fuentes, she did not provide her phone on the day of your interview, correct?
No, she did not.
That may have been the only time you encountered a teenager that did not have their cell phone with them.
At the time, yes, but now that I think about it, it wasn't weird very much.
You didn't ask Fuentes to reschedule or have her come in on a separate date.
No, I didn't. I didn't think it was all that important to reschedule it. I trusted Alex to give me the screenshots, and I had no reason to believe that they wouldn't be true.
You asked her to email the screenshots to you, correct?
I did.
Fuentes emailed the screenshots the day after your interview, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So a whole day had passed before you got the evidence you requested.
Yes.
You have training with software that allows you to download the contents of a cell phone, correct?
I did, but I didn't find it needed for this investigation.
So despite having this software available to you, you didn't bother to use it?
That would be correct.
Let's move on to your investigation process. You claim good police work requires you to follow up on all possible leads?
Yes, I do stand by that rule, and I've stood by this in every investigation, including this one.
You didn't follow up with the person who reported a person passed out on Brackman's porch in the 911 call?
No, I didn't.
Brackman's body was located inside the front door of the residence.
Yes, it was.
Not on the porch, correct?
It wasn't, but I would assume that from a passing motorist, you couldn't be able to see whether the body was inside or outside of the house based on the perspective of where the person most likely was.
Let's move on. Your Honor, permission for the witness to view Exhibit 1?
Granted.
For the record, my co-counsel will now share their screen with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1. As pictured here, Brackman's left arm is positioned above his head, correct?
That's correct.
Your Honor, may my co-counsel share their screen with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4?
Yes.
For the record, my co-counsel is now sharing their screen with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4. Detective Markowitz, do you recognize this exhibit?
I do.
What is it?
This is another picture of the victim, and you can see that the knife wound in his back with the puddle of blood underneath.
How do you know what it is?
Because it's in evidence.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of Exhibit 4?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Exhibit 4 into evidence. Its accuracy and authenticity have been stipulated.
Prosecution, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
At this time, I'll admit into evidence Exhibit 4. Proceed.
Brackman's left arm has moved from above his head to the side
Your
of his
Honor,
head, correct?
If I may, on behalf of prosecution, may we publish this exhibit as defense forgot to?
Yes. Thank you.
Your Honor, I believe admission was covered in preliminary matters.
That's fine. Let's move on. Proceed with the questioning of this witness and cross-examination of this witness. Thank you.
Okay, may I re-ask the question?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Brackman's left arm has moved from above his head to the side of his head, correct?
Yes, it has.
So someone moved the victim's body in between these two photos?
Look, at crime scenes like this, there's often a lot of people there and a lot of commotion. As you can see, this body is kind of near the front doorway of the house, which is a crucial spot for people to enter and exit the home. It's likely that somebody nudged the arm or something in the investigation, checking his pulse maybe or something.
So despite this being crucial evidence, it may have been moved?
This is still an accurate copy of the victim, and the point of this picture is to show that the victim had a knife wound in his back.
Let's move on. For the record, my co-counsel will now stop sharing their screen with what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4. Let's move on to who the victim was. You recognized Brackman when you found him, correct?
I did.
You knew he was a defense attorney?
I did, yes.
This murder could have been the work of a previous client.
Yes, it could have.
Blair Rollins' father was a client of Brackman's, correct?
It was, or they were, yes.
Brackman lost the case that got Blair's father sent to prison for murder.
I believe so, yes.
Blair was in the courtroom when that occurred?
I think.
This ties Rollins to Brackman, correct?
I suppose so.
You spent a month investigating all leads, correct?
I did.
But you did not investigate Blair Rollins.
I go wherever the evidence takes me. I mean, the devil is in the details, if that's what they say. I looked at the mock trial lead first because that's the first lead I got. I went where the evidence took me, and that lead brought me to my conclusions about this case.
So you ran with the first lead and disregarded everything else?
No, that's not what I said. I said that the mock trial lead was the first lead I investigated. I followed up on this lead because it was the first one, but I also followed up on other leads, and I did not disregard anything in this investigation.
So, as you say, you let the evidence guide you.
Yes.
And the evidence guided you straight to Avery.
It did.
Blair's home was included in the call detail records you provided to the court today, correct?
I believe it was.
You signed your affidavit knowing you must include anything at all relevant to the case.
Yes.
Yet Blair was not once mentioned in your affidavit.
As I didn't find it very relevant to the case.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ms. Hepner, do you have redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Detective Markowitz, who committed this crime?
Avery Becker committed this crime. There was no doubt about that in my investigation.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll take a few seconds for the panelists to complete their work, and then we'll move on to the next. Okay, prosecution, would you like to proceed with questioning your next witness?
The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
You may proceed.
Hello, Mr. Cifuentes. Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
May I call you Alex?
You may.
Please tell the jury a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a senior at Colorado High School. I was a junior last year, and I was on the mock trial team coached by Mr. Brackman.
Please tell the jury about mock trial.
Oh, I loved mock trial, and I was good at it. I was a great lawyer and a good witness, although being a witness is a bit strange in real life. Anyways, I was on the team with two people in this room, Avery Becker, the defendant, and Taylor Perkins.
Do you personally know Avery Becker?
I do. It's still pretty hard to take the stand against a teammate.
What's your relationship with Avery like?
Well, Avery was my best friend and was actually the person that got me into mock trial. I liked Avery, but the coach didn't really seem to.
Did you observe anything that supports that?
Well, yes. Avery constantly antagonized the coach, and, Brackman wanted a flawless team that was prepared for any situation, and Avery scoffed at preparation. It caused problems.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
Response, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Alex is on the mock trial team. He clearly has experience witnessing what happened at these practices and just the general team dynamic.
Defense, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Witness is testifying to things such as Avery Becker scoffed at preparation. Avery Becker's mindset is not for the witness to testify to, as he has no personal knowledge of what Mr. Becker thought or felt.
Prosecution, do you have anything?
It's not a mindset, it's an action, and it's rationally based on the witness's perception of character.
I'm going to overrule the objection. Again, I agree, it's not a mindset, it is an action. So you may proceed with questioning. Why don't you ask the question again?
What kind, did you observe anything that supports Coach Brackman not liking Avery?
Yes. Coach Brackman wanted a bulletproof team that was prepared for anything. Avery wasn't a huge fan of preparation, and it caused a lot of problems.
What kind of problems?
Well, for starters, they argued every single practice. It was preposterous.
What did they argue about?
Well, Avery improvised and winged everything, and annoyingly, Avery was extremely good at it. Coach hated this. It caused 3 huge blow-ups. I used to always joke that they'd kill each other, but I really never expected fate could be so literal.
Could you tell the jury about the first blow-up?
Sure. The first blow-up started because Avery was late, again, for like the millionth time. So Brackman hit a boiling point, and his fury was beyond evident.
What happened next?
Well, you see, the coach demoted Avery down to B team. It was a major slap in the face, considering that Avery was a senior.
Did Avery stay on the B team?
No, he wasn't on B team very long at all.
How come?
Well, Avery got Taylor Perkins, his other best friend, to quit.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Ms. Delfolo Daly, do you have a response?
This isn't speculation. This is a series of events that happened. Their actions Alex Cifuentes has witnessed.
Ms. Farkas?
Your Honor, the statement of Avery got Ms. Perkins to step down is specifically what I'm objecting to. This implies that Avery somehow convinced Ms. Perkins to step down, which is speculation.
Rationally based on witnesses' perception?
I'll sustain an objection. Please proceed.
Movement to strike, Your Honor.
Witnesses' statement is please strike that from the record. Panelists are not to consider that. Please proceed, prosecution.
Alex, why wasn't Avery on B team for very long?
Well, Avery Perkins, Avery's other best friend, quit mock trial. And since there was a gap in A team that we needed to fill, after a 5-minute timeout, once again, we had Avery on A team.
Was that the end of blow up number 1?
Yes, it was.
Okay. When does blow up number 2 start?
Well, shortly after we went to regionals, and Avery winged it as always, and even won Best Attorney Award, which is like the holy grail of mock trial. So I was a little peeved.
Why?
Well, I worked really hard on my materials, and Avery just conjures up greatness out of nothing and completely wrapped the jury around her finger. But, you know, c'est la vie. And my frustrations were dwarfed by Brackman's.
Why was that?
Well, Brackman said that in the real world, in the and in a real courtroom, just coming in without the faintest touch of prep would be malpractice. And Avery got all huffy puffy and stormed out of practice.
What happened after?
Well, this bleeds directly into blow up number 3.
Okay. What happened next?
Well, what happened next was absolutely ridiculous. Criminal, in fact. When Avery stormed out, Avery had a permanent marker in his hand.
Knowledge.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your objection.
My objection was to lack of personal knowledge, Your Honor.
Prosecution, do you have a response?
The witness has not yet testified to anything outside his personal knowledge.
I agree. I'm going to overrule the objection. You may proceed with the question, but let's go back to the question and then have the witness start over on his answer.
Okay. Alex, what happened in blow up number 3?
Well, in blow up number 3, when Avery stormed out of practice, Avery had a permanent marker in his hand, and then he proceeded to write Worst Attorney Award on Coach
Objection,
Brackman's
Your Honor, lack
portion.
of personal knowledge.
Prosecution, do you have a response?
This is known by the team and is in the statements of both Avery Becker, Taylor Perkins, and Alex Cifuentes, and evidence is admissible for proving motive.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I haven't heard anything that indicates that this witness has personal knowledge of what happened. And the fact that other people have made those statements is not enough to overcome the objection. Please proceed.
Alex, what was Brackman's reaction?
Well, obviously, he was extremely irate and booted Avery off the team for good.
And what was Avery's reaction to being kicked off the team?
Well,
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Once again, rationally based on witnesses' perception.
I'm not clear if the witness has personal knowledge of Avery's, anything that Avery did. So if I could get a connection, I might be able to allow the testimony. But at this point, I'm going to have to sustain the objection.
Alex, did Avery talk to you after?
yes. Afterwards, Avery texted me and was desperate to get back on the team.
Directing your attention to Exhibit 14, please identify it.
These are the texts Avery sent me.
Are these accurate?
Yes.
Your Honor, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 14 into evidence. Its authenticity and accuracy have been shown.
Ms. Fergus, do you have any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection under Rule 1002, requirement of the original.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
Under Rule 1003, a duplicate is admissible to the same extent as the original unless a genuine question has been raised about the authenticity. No genuine question has been raised, and Alex just testified to the authenticity.
I'm going to allow this exhibit and I'm going to admit it into evidence as Exhibit 14. You may publish to the jury.
Okay. What is important in these text messages?
Well, they start off relatively normal. You know, Avery asking my help to get back on the team. But after that, it gets a bit strange.
How so?
Well, after I tell Avery that it's unlikely that Brackman was going to let him back on the team, Avery says, and I quote, well, if he's still upset about his car, he's gonna be really upset when he sees what I do to his house.
What did Avery plan to do to victim's house?
Well, Avery planned on breaking in and trashing the house to really show him.
What was your response?
Well, I think I had a pretty, rational response. I thought it was a terrible idea, and I told Avery that.
Did Avery listen to you?
Of course not.
Can you tell the jury how you know this?
Well, I saw the troubled relationship Avery and Brackman had. I saw Avery vandalize the coach's car. I received text where Avery threatened to vandalize the coach's house. Somebody broke into my coach's house, and now Coach Brackman is dead. That's how I know.
Finally, directing your attention to Exhibit 10, which has been previously admitted. This is a video of the intruder at the victim's house. Based on everything you know, who is behind that devil's mask?
That's Avery. The build is identical.
Objection,
The
Your
text I
Honor.
received.
What's the basis of the objection?
Speculation, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, say that again.
My objection was speculation, Your Honor.
Prosecution, do you have a response?
Rationally based on witnesses' perception?
I'm going to sustain the objection. This is speculation, and I don't think you've overcome that. Go ahead.
No further questions.
Oops. Ms. Fergus, do you have a cross-examination of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Good evening, Mr. Fuentes. Let's begin. You claim to be good friends with Avery Becker, correct?
Correct.
Although you and Avery only spend time together at mock trial practice and related events.
Correct.
You felt you and Avery were equally skilled on the mock trial team.
I did.
You spent much more time on mock trial than Avery did.
Yes, I did.
It bothered you when Avery got such important roles on the team.
Indeed, it did.
It upset you when Avery would just come into mock trial and make things up.
Yes, it upset me.
You felt that Avery didn't win any awards because of any real talent.
Yes, I said that Avery won awards on good looks alone.
You were looking forward to getting more important roles with Avery off of the team.
I was, but with Avery off the team, it meant we couldn't go to state.
You felt the team was better off as a whole without Avery.
I did. Avery had us in a constant state of anxiety, at least had me in a constant state of anxiety.
So that is a yes, you felt the team was better off without Avery.
Yes, the team was better off without Avery.
Let's discuss Exhibit 14, Mr. Cifuentes. Detective Markowitz called you in for an interview regarding information on your phone, correct?
Yes.
However, you didn't bring your phone with you to the interview.
I did not. My phone is a pretty bad charge. It didn't hold the charge at all. And I forgot it on the charger under the stress of actually going to a real police station.
You didn't realize at any point on the way to the police station that you had forgotten your phone.
No, I was mainly grief-stricken by the death of my coach and scared about actually having to be interviewed by a police officer.
Detective Markowitz never requested that you bring your phone at a later time.
Nope, Detective Markowitz did not. I was asked to send screenshots.
You traded in your phone even knowing it contained evidence?
I did. I sent my screenshots off, and I really needed a new phone. I need to communicate with parents, with friends, so I traded in my phone.
So that is a yes, you were aware that your phone contained evidence when you traded it in.
Yes, but I sent the screenshots.
So you no longer have direct access to those messages.
I do not.
You no longer know where the phone is.
No, we traded it in. It could be anywhere.
Let's discuss the text messages themselves. You claim to have received text messages from Avery Becker with plans to break into Mr. Brackman's home, correct?
Correct.
Despite receiving these messages, you didn't find it necessary to warn Mr. Brackman?
Well, Avery was extremely emotional at the time. I assumed Avery was bluffing, so I thought that it wasn't really necessary to out Avery like that.
Nor did you go to the authorities with this information.
As I said, I assumed Avery was bluffing. Unfortunately, I was wrong.
In fact, even after Mr. Brackman was killed, you still didn't contact the authorities. Detective Markowitz contacted you.
This is correct. I was torn. I didn't initially want to rat out my friend, but once the police contacted me, I realized that I definitely need to give them the information.
Let's talk about March 5th, 2020. That's the night before Mr. Brackman was killed. You saw Avery at the Fry Shack that night, correct?
Yes, this is correct.
And at some point that night, you were in possession of Avery Becker's phone.
Yes, this is true. As I said, my phone was not very good at the time, so I decided I wanted to play a game on Avery's phone.
So that is a yes. At some point during that evening, you were in possession of Avery Becker's phone.
Yes, I was playing a game.
Let's move on. You are aware that Mr. Brackman had previously represented the parent of a student at your high school?
I was not aware, but yes, that's true.
You are testifying today that you are not aware that Mr. Brackman had previously represented the parent of a student at your high school?
I mean, listen, it might have been possible, but I was not thinking about it at the time. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. I apologize. It's on me.
So are you testifying today that you were aware or that you weren't aware, Mr.?
Well, I was aware. I misspoke. I just wasn't thinking about it, but I was definitely aware that the coach was representing people, the parents of people in school.
You attended school with Blair Rollins.
I did. I didn't know him very well, but I did.
You saw Blair regularly in hallways, etc.
Yes, we exchanged pleasantries, but that was about the extent of it. I'm not even sure if we had a class together.
You haven't seen Blair Rollins since Mr. Brackman was killed?
No, I have not.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect.
No, Your Honor.
We'll take a few seconds for the panelists to complete their work, and then we'll move on to the next witness. Okay, prosecution, you may proceed with the third witness.
The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand. Mr. Kuzak, please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
All right, and how long have you been in that position?
I've been there for 19 years this year, actually. And I'm in my third year of tenure with the city of Denver.
And does your position require any certification?
It does. I'm certified by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Your Honor, I move to admit Mr. Kuzak as an expert witness in crime scene reconstruction, as his experience and certification qualifies him to give an expert opinion under Rule 702.
Defense, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Allow him to testify. I'll allow him to testify as an expert. Thank you. Go ahead.
Let's start by talking about your work in general. What is crime scene reconstruction?
So crime scene reconstruction is a process by which I, the investigator, take into account evidence provided to me by the police. Evidence like blood spatter, scuff marks, videos, anything that they collect at the scene of the crime, they give to me, and I use that to reconstruct the events of what happened at a crime scene.
And can you briefly describe the process by which you do that?
Of course, I always approach it in 5 steps: recognition and documentation, collection of evidence, evaluation of evidence, hypothesis and testing, and then the final reconstruction.
Now let's talk about this specific case. Can you describe the recognition of evidence, one of your steps, as it pertains to this case?
Of course. I took all the evidence provided by the police and I organize it into this matrix, and that helps me memorialize it and use it for my later analysis.
And after this documentation, what did you do?
Then I move on to my second and third steps, which involves visiting the scene of the crime. So I visit and get a good sense of the setting of how things would have played out, and I then begin to connect the evidences I collected were presented to me into evidentiary relationships.
And can you give an example of an evidentiary relationship in this case?
Of course. One of the most important, prominent ones was between photographs. There was the evidence that in the photographs of the body and knife found at the front door, and then there was the photographs of blood spatter across the walls and ceiling of that front door foyer. And then finally, there was photographs of blood droplets leading from the kitchen to that location. So you can connect those into to form this evidentiary relationship that Brackman was stabbed in the kitchen. He moved himself to that front door where he pulled out the knife, sent that blood spatter on the walls, and promptly died.
And what's the next step you take after examining those evidentiary relationships?
I move on to formulating my official hypothesis and testing that, which involves connecting these smaller evidentiary relationships into longer, more chronologically placed event segments.
And what prominent event segments do you see in this case?
There were 3 important ones. There was the ring system videos, there was the scuff marks found at the back door, and there was the journey of the knife.
And through your process, which you just described for us, what did you conclude from the evidence in this case?
Through my process, at the end, when I reached my final conclusion, I found that the perpetrator, Avery Becker, masked in this devilish visage, approached the front door of the residence, tried the handle, found it locked, and decided to go around the side of the house towards the unlocked sliding glass door, where he was able to gain entry into the residence.
And then what happened?
Well, unbeknownst to Avery, Avery had predicted that Mr. Brackman would not have been home, so he could trash the house freely, but Brackman was home and heard Avery trying to enter through the door. Hearing an intruder, he tried to arm himself, settled in a large Chicago cutlery chef's knife from his own kitchen, and decides to stab the intruder when they enter.
And what happened after that?
Well, Avery entering the back door and Brackman being ready for an intruder, they engaged in this close combat, this struggle.
Mr. Kuzak, please direct your attention to Exhibit 18. Without
Of course.
contents, please identify it.
Exhibit 18 was a photograph provided to me of the scuff marks found near the back door.
And is this an authentic copy?
It is.
An accurate copy?
It is.
Your Honor, I move to admit Exhibit 18 into evidence as its authenticity and accuracy have been shown.
Ms. Johnston, do you have any objections?
No objection, Your Honor.
I'll admit into evidence Exhibit 18.
Permission to publish to the jury via screen share.
Permission granted.
Mr. Kuzak, can you tell the jury about these scuff marks?
Through my analysis techniques, I was able to discern that these clearly depict a close combat struggle just inside that door. Must have been created by Avery, Becker, the intruder, and Brackman with the knife.
And what did you find happened after the struggle?
Well, as this struggle ensued and they moved through the kitchen, the intruder, Avery Becker, unfortunately was able to wrestle the knife away from Brackman's grip.
And then what happened after that?
Well, Brackman, seeing this, tried to constrain him in this big bear hug to kind of trap his arms. Brackman was not successful, and Avery Becker was still able to reach around and stab Brackman in the back once, plunging the knife all the way in. Seeing this, Avery Becker flees to the front door, leaving it open, and as Brackman tries to follow, he pulls the knife out of his back, and what started as just a prank, as just what would have been criminal mischief, turned into felony murder.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzak. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, do you have cross of this
Yes,
witness?
Your Honor. Before I begin, since I'm the last cross-examination, may I ask for a brief time check? Thank you. Mr. Kuzak, you visited the scene of the homicide, correct?
I did.
There were scuff marks found on the floor at the scene?
There were.
You believe the scuff marks indicated some sort of struggle near the back door, correct?
I know the scuff marks indicated a struggle.
So you are certain that those scuff marks were created during the homicide?
Yes, well, that was less of a certainty, but knowing that they created a struggle and knowing that that's where the perpetrator entered, those are easily connected.
There is no definitive way to tell when exactly those scuff marks were created?
Yes, I'm uncomfortable with saying anything with 100% certainty, but I can say that this is the probable conclusion.
Let's move on to the Ring security app. You believe that the Ring app must have alerted Mr. Brackman to the presence of an intruder, correct?
Yes, I find that to be most likely.
Brackman could have turned off Ring notifications to his phone?
That's true. I don't know whether or not notifications were turned on.
Brackman simply could not have seen the Ring alert on his phone?
That's true as well. But in all of these cases, that he was then likely alerted by the actual, jiggling of his doorknob.
Brackman's phone was not at any point analyzed to confirm his receipt of the Ring notifications?
I don't believe so. Yes, I don't believe so. I didn't get indication of that.
Let's move on to the blood splatter found at the scene. You reviewed the photographs of the blood droplets and the blood trail found at the scene, correct?
I did.
These pictures were lost at some point in the investigation?
Yes, I'm just a crime scene reconstructionist, though I'm not the custodian of that evidence. I hear it was corrupted somehow.
So part of your opinion was based off of pictures that cannot be seen here in court today?
Yes. There's actually a lot of my bases that can't be seen here in court, like my experience of the crime scene, but that doesn't diminish their importance and their validity.
You would have preferred to have more physical evidence at the scene?
I would have, but then again, I always do.
You couldn't put together exactly what happened?
That's true.
You were not able to place all of the evidence?
That's true as well. There's some ambiguity as to, as you mentioned earlier, whether he was alerted by the Ring doorbell or his physical doorknob.
You were not able to place all the evidence, even though it seemed like a straightforward home invasion crime?
It did, and in the end it was.
Let's move on. Your Honor, permission for the witness to view Exhibit 17?
Go ahead.
Mr. Cusack, do you recognize Exhibit 17?
Yes, I do.
What is Exhibit 17?
Well, the first page is my evidence tracking spreadsheet, or my witness tracking spreadsheet, sorry. Second page is my evidence tracking spreadsheet, and the third page is a flowchart, chronological flowchart.
Is the exhibit you're reviewing a complete and accurate copy of the one used during your investigation?
It is.
How do you know?
I created it, by the way. And yes, it's accurate.
Your Honor, I now move to admit Exhibit 17.
Prosecution, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor, as long as the defense makes sure to show all pages of Exhibit 17 and not just one.
Is that okay with you, Ms. Johnson? Okay,
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to publish to the jury by sharing their screen.
go ahead. Let me also admit into evidence Exhibit 17. Go ahead.
For the record, my co-counsel now shows you exhibit number 17. Taylor Perkins, who claims she was with Avery the day of the murder, was mentioned in your witness tracking spreadsheet, correct?
Yes, she is.
Alex Cifuentes was interviewed as part of the investigation.
That's true.
That interview report was dated for June of 2020, correct?
That's true.
3 months after the homicide occurred?
Yes, I suppose that's probably a reasonable timeline for a detective. I didn't conduct those interviews, though.
Let the record reflect I've stopped sharing my screen.
Objection, Your Honor. Opposing counsel has only shown one page of Exhibit 17 as it was previously asked to show all pages.
Ms. Johnston?
My bad, Your Honor. I thought all 3 pages were being shown. That is a technical.
I think we had the thumbnails, but we didn't have every document. So if you want to publish all 3 pages, go ahead.
So there, we have it, page number 3, and page number 2, and page number 1 of Exhibit 17.
Thank you. You may proceed with questioning the witness.
Thank you. Let's move on. Sorry, one moment. I'm having technical difficulties. My bad. Let's move on. The intruder was wearing gloves, correct?
They were.
So there was no DNA found at the scene besides that of Mr. Brackman's?
That's true.
There was no DNA found at the scene that pointed directly to Avery Becker?
No DNA.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Prosecution, any further questions?
Briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Cusack, you testified earlier that the scuff marks indicate a struggle between the victim and the intruder. Why do you believe that those indicate that?
Could you repeat the last bit of your question?
Why do you believe those scuff marks indicate that?
Oh, of course. Well, analyzing scuff marks and evidence like that is part of my job. It's something I do very regularly, and it's a part of my expertise. So I analyze these scuff marks as I do all the others, and I determined that they must have been from a struggle. The only problem was that opposing counsel would be correct in assuming that it's hard to pinpoint the actual date of that creation of those scuff marks, but knowing that they're a struggle and knowing that there was a struggle at that location between Brackman and Avery Becker, as also evidenced by some broken plates and other evidence at the crime scene, it can be pretty reasonably surmised that those scuff marks came from that specific struggle.
And you testified that you examined all the evidence that you were given in this case. What conclusion did you draw?
I came to the conclusion that this must have been Avery Becker. Considering all the suspects presented, this was the only probable conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Cusack. No further questions.
Ms. Johnston, do you have a brief redraft?
No brief redirect, Your Honor.
Okay. We're going to take a second for the panelists to do their work, and then we'll move on to the defense's case. Defense, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's just check before you call. Let's check Miss Wright's audio and see if it works. And if not, she can continue to work on it. Miss Wright?
Changed my audio, Your Honor.
Is it still faint for everybody? Miss Miller,
Yeah.
can you hear Miss Wright?
I can hear her. It is a little quiet, but I can figure out what she's saying.
Okay.
She's not the first witness.
I know. I just wanted to give her time to work on it if there's something that
Okay.
she can do. If not, then we'll just proceed. We'll just roll with it. Okay.
Your Honor,
So thank you, Miss Wright.
work on it.
What, Miss Wright?
I will continue to try and work on it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Miss Miller, call your first witness and proceed.
The defense wishes to call Avery Becker to the stand. Good afternoon, Mr. Becker. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Avery Becker, Becker.
Why are you here today?
I'm being unfairly accused of murdering Mr. Brackman.
Let's start by talking about Mr. Brackman. How did you and Mr. Brackman know each other?
He was my mock trial coach for all 4 years of high school.
How was your relationship with Mr. Brackman?
It was like a family relationship where we would spend a lot of time together. So we got to know each other really well, and we had plenty of good times, but we also fought quite often. Often we would fight about my work ethic. He didn't think I put enough work and effort into my directs and crosses, even though they've won awards before. And that was just discouraging because really we just had different kinds of styles. He liked having laid out direct crosses. Well, I liked to make them up on the fly.
How did this make you feel?
It was discouraging. I respected his opinion because he was my coach, and it hurt that he disapproved of my way of doing things.
Did you have any other opinions about Mr. Brackman?
I thought he was a great coach. He got our team to a position where we were able to be competitive. We were able to compete in tournaments, and we were able to win awards. And I really appreciate him and respect him for that.
Let's move on to the vandalizing incident. How did you feel after realizing you used a permanent marker by mistake?
I really regretted it. I didn't think it was a permanent marker, so I didn't think the damage would be permanent. I just wasn't thinking, and I just wish that he was still alive so I could properly apologize to him.
What did you do to apologize?
I tried to meet him at his office, but was unsuccessful. I also sent him a text saying that I apologize sincerely. I said that I would get a job to pay for a new coat of paint or work really hard to try and scrub it off, but he never replied.
Let's talk about March 5th, the day before Mr. Brackman was murdered. What did you do on March 5th?
After school, Taylor and I went to the Fry Shack and played games on our phones.
Who did you see at the Fry Shack?
Well, I saw a bunch of other mock trial students, including Alex Fuentes.
Who is Alex Fuentes?
Alex Fuentes is another student at our school and is also in mock trial.
Did the two of you interact at the Fry Shack?
Yeah, I let him borrow my phone.
Were you friends with Alex?
No. We were more enemies. We were always competing for the awards and fighting for the #1 spot on the team.
What happened at the Fry Shack?
Well, somehow I lost my phone.
When did you realize it was missing?
I realized it the next morning.
And what did you do after finding out your phone was missing?
Well, Taylor and I went to the Fry Shack in the mall and we searched all over the place. We tried calling it, but we never found it.
What happened when you tried to call your phone?
It would go straight to voicemail.
What did you conclude from this?
It was either dead or stolen.
Who would have had the opportunity to steal your phone?
Well, Alex Fuentes would have had a good opportunity
Objection.
since
This witness is being asked to speculate.
Ms. Miller, do you have a response?
Sorry, could opposing counsel repeat their objection? I cut out.
Yes, this witness is being asked to speculate, so my objection is to speculation.
Your Honor, this falls under proper lay opinion rule 701. This is rationally based on Avery's perception at the time.
I'm going to sustain the objection. It is speculation. Counsel, if you want to rephrase the question or restate the question and just proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Avery, based on what happened at the Fry Shack, where do you believe your phone may have ended up?
I think that Alex probably could have taken it since I let
Objection,
him
once
borrow
again,
it
this
at
is
the Friday.
speculation.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Move on, counsel.
What happened regarding Alex and your phone?
Alex claims to have received text from me saying that I needed help getting back on the mock trial team, that I was going to trash Mr. Brackman's house, which is just completely ridiculous. I would never go that far. It was just mock trial. And also Alex would be the last person I would ask for help.
Let's talk about Blair Rollins. Who is Blair Rollins?
Blair is another student at our school. To my knowledge, Blair and Alex are friends.
What information do you have regarding Blair and Mr. Brackman?
From what I understand, Blair and Mr. Brackman, Blair's father was represented by Mr. Brackman in court, and Mr. Brackman lost the case, getting Blair's father thrown in jail.
Did you hear Detective Markowitz's testimony today?
Yes, I did.
Did you hear him testify that your phone had been located near Brackman's house on the day of March 6th?
Yep.
How do you explain that?
Well, I think that Alex took my phone and gave it to Blair, who then took it to Mr. Brackman's house to try and prank me.
Objection, the witness is speculating.
Ms. Miller, do you have a response?
Your Honor, this falls under speculation, proper lay opinion rule 701. It's rationally based on what the witness perceived about what happened to his phone after it was stolen by Alex in regards to what has already been testified about, not only Blair Rollins, but Alex as well.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
The witness is testifying that he thinks Alex has stolen the phone. At this point, that's speculation, and there's no evidence that the witness has or that has been presented to prove that. So this does not fall under any exception to the rule on speculation, and it is speculation.
Ms. Miller? Do you have a response?
Your Honor, yes, based on the perception that my witness has of Blair and Alex, this is what they have been able to conclude rationally. And therefore, it would fall under rule 701.
May I respond?
No need to. I'm going to sustain your objection.
May I
And
also move to strike that statement from the record, Your Honor?
that statement is that statement is struck from the record. Ms. Miller, proceed.
I'll move on. What similarities do you share with Blair Rollins?
Blair and I are about the same height and size.
What do you know about Blair's current whereabouts?
To my knowledge, nobody has seen Blair since the murder of Mr. Brackman.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ms. Mance, sorry. Prosecution, you may proceed with questioning.
Hello, Mr. Becker. I'd like to begin by asking you about your relationship with Mr. Brackman. Do you understand?
Yes.
All right, so you were on the Colorado High School mock trial team for all 4 years of high school.
Yeah, that's correct. I really like mock trial.
And you made that choice to join with Taylor Perkins.
Yeah, Taylor and I are good friends.
In fact, you were best friends.
Yeah.
You saw mock trial as a way to hang out.
Yeah, we would often sit next to each other or text across the room.
You testified earlier that Coach Brackman and yourself didn't have a great relationship.
Yeah, that is true.
He said you were lazy.
Yeah, he often thought that I didn't put enough effort into my directs and crosses, which was discouraging.
Right, he said you didn't put in work.
Yeah.
In fact, you say in your statement you think he hated you.
Sometimes it felt like that.
You'd argue at almost every—
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
May I respond?
Yes.
This is not offered to prove for the truth of the matter asserted. The matter asserted is Avery thinking that Brockman hated her, or him, rather, and this is not offered to prove that at all.
Can you restate the question for me?
You think he hated you. In your statement, you say you think he hated you.
I'm gonna overrule the objection. You may proceed with that question.
Seeing as I already have your answer, I'll move on to the next one. You'd argue at almost every practice.
Yeah, like I said, we had a family relationship where we got to know each other really well. And just like any family relationship, you argue quite often.
Eventually, Brackman moved you down to the B team.
Yeah.
Away from your best friend.
Yeah, he thought that if I wouldn't be distracted by Taylor Perkins, then I would be able to put in more work.
So you tried everything to get back on A team.
Yeah, I thought I had a lot more potential on the A team. I would be able to win awards like I did. And so, yeah, I really wanted to be on the A team.
All right, in the future, a simple yes or no for questions like that will suffice. Taylor Perkins quit the team.
Yeah, Taylor quit so that I could be on the team since Mr. Brackman would have nobody else to cover.
Moving further along the timeline, after the regional competition, Brackman didn't congratulate you on your performance.
Yeah, he went right to criticizing my work.
And that made you angry.
Yeah, it was frustrating because I thought that, we would be happy that I had won awards.
That's a yes, you were angry.
Yes.
Verbal yes, thank you. And you threw insults at your coach.
Yeah, I was angry.
In your statement, you call Brackman a lousy attorney.
Yeah, I felt like often he would put more work into mock trial and helping the team grow rather than working on his own job.
But Brackman was successful enough to own a Porsche.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's actually talk about that car. When you left at the practice after regionals, you had a permanent marker in your hand.
Yeah, I thought it was a dry erase marker.
I'm sorry, but that was not my question. The marker in your hand was permanent, yes?
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Move on, counsel.
As a result, you were dismissed from your mock trial team.
Yes.
So you went home.
Yeah.
And you talked to your mother.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
I'm gonna direct Mr. Becker to answer yes or no. And yeah, and any other sounds may not translate that well on the transcript.
My apologies, Your Honor.
Okay, that's okay. Counsel, proceed.
Once again, you talked to your mother.
Yes.
But you told her Brackman got on you for no good reason.
Yeah, I was ashamed of what I had done, and I didn't want my mom to be ashamed of me too.
You were even angrier than before.
Yeah, I just been kicked off the team. I really wanted to go to state. I was really excited about it, and mock trial is something that I love to do. And so, I was mad that I wasn't going to be able to do it.
That's a yes. You were even angrier.
Yes.
What you did tell your mother, however, was that you'd get back at Mr. Brackman if it was the last thing you did.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking. As I've said, I was angry. And so, I just said that without really thinking about it. I didn't really mean it.
That's a yes. You told your—
That is a yes.
Moving along, take a look at Exhibit 14 in front of you. You should have it. It was published also to the jury earlier.
Yep.
These are texts with your name at the top of the conversation.
Yep.
Read silently with me as I read aloud. The first text, "Hey Alex, it's Avery." The next text, "I'm sure you're aware that I got kicked off the team. I'm pretty desperate to get back on." You did get kicked off the team.
Yes, that is correct.
And you were, in fact, desperate to get back on.
Yeah, I love mock trial and I want to be back on the team.
Keep reading silently as I continue to the third green text. Come on, please. It's really important to me. Mock trial was really important to you.
Yeah, I love mock trial.
A while ago, you heard Alex Cifuentes testify that you asked Alex for help getting back on the team.
Yes, I do remember hearing that.
No further questions. Thank you, Mr. Cifuentes. Sorry, Mr. Becker.
Ms. Miller, do you have any further questions of this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Becker, did you send any text to Alex Cifuentes?
No, Alex would be the last person I would ask for help. And as I said on direct, I did not send those texts.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further redirect.
Prosecution, do you have any questions off of that within the scope of that last question?
No, Your Honor. No recross is necessary.
Okay. We'll pause for a second for the panelists to do their work, and then we'll proceed in a second with the second defense witness.
Your Honor, the next defense witness is portrayed by Ms. Wright. Would you like her to test her audio at this time?
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking the same thing.
Is it any better? I switched to phone audio.
That is so much better. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Can everybody else hear? Or does anybody else have a difficulty hearing this right? That might be an easier question. Okay, not hearing anything. I'll let Ms. Perkins proceed with questioning Ms. Perkins.
Good evening, Ms. Perkins. Let's start by stating your name and spelling your last for the record.
My name is Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
How do you know the victim, Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was my mock trial coach when I went to high school.
And how do you know the defendant, Avery Becker?
Avery and I are really good friends, and we even were on the mock trial team together at school.
Based on your observations, how would you describe the interactions between Mr. Brackman and Mr. Becker?
They bickered sometimes, but I don't think it was anything too out of the ordinary.
How would you characterize their relationship?
I think it was very similar to a family type dynamic. They saw each other frequently, and so that in turn led to some bickering, but I don't think it was anything too different from a normal student-coach relationship. Honestly, most of the time I just thought it was funny.
Why do you believe that Mr. Brackman and Mr. Becker didn't get along?
I think that Avery was really naturally talented at mock trial, and so Avery didn't have to put in as much work as maybe some of the other students, and I think that kind of rubbed Brackman the wrong way.
What were some of the consequences of their ongoing conflict?
Well, after a argument between them, Mr. Brackman demoted Avery from the A team to the B team.
What did you do when Avery was demoted?
Well, it put the team in a really rough place, and I didn't really have the same passion for mock trial that Avery did. I mostly just joined to spend time with him, and since he was gone, that wasn't really an option anymore. So by removing myself from the A team, I knew that Mr. Brackman would have no choice but to put him back on the A team.
After you removed yourself, how did the team perform at the regional tournament?
They did really well. Avery even won some awards, and I think that just goes to show that I made the right choice.
Ms. Perkins, Avery just testified about the events that led him to be removed from the mock trial team completely. Did you and Avery speak about those events?
Yeah, we talked later that night about them.
What did you and Avery discuss about him being removed from the team?
Well, we talked about different ways that Avery could possibly get back on the A team back on the team just since it meant so much to him.
How did you perceive Avery to feel in these discussions?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Ms. Perkins, do you have any response?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Perkins will be testifying to her opinion, however, is a proper lay opinion under Rule 701, as there's already been a foundation laid that she and Avery Becker were close friends. Therefore, it is within her rational perception that Mr. Becker was upset, remorseful, etc., under 701B, it is helpful to understanding the case as it verifies Mr. Becker's testimony that he was remorseful, and under 701C, it doesn't require any specialized knowledge.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, I'm sorry. Let me change my screen for a second. I'm having, okay. Ms. Hepner.
Okay, so she's being asked to guess what Avery felt. That is automatically speculation because she's being asked to guess something. She has no way of knowing if Avery actually felt that way besides Avery telling her. So it is speculation because she is guessing.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I agree with Ms. Hepner. This is speculation. She cannot guess at what Avery was thinking or feeling.
Your Honor.
Yes?
I ask that the answer be stricken from the record.
I'll grant that request, and the answer is stricken from the record. Ms. Perkins, please proceed with questioning the witness.
Let's talk about March 5th, 2020. That is the night before Mr. Brackman was killed. Did you see Avery that day?
Yeah, we hung out, and then we inevitably got hungry, and so we went to the Fry Shack.
Who else was at the Fry Shack that night?
Most of the mock trial team was there, and one of Avery's least favorite people was there, Alex Cifuentes.
How do you know Alex Cifuentes?
Alex Cifuentes is another student on the mock trial team. We were never very close. Avery really didn't like him.
What was the interaction like with Alex that particular night?
Alex seemed really insincere when talking to Avery about how bad he felt that Avery had been kicked off the team, and so naturally this made Avery pretty upset.
What did Avery do after this interaction?
Well, like I said, he got pretty upset, and so he left to go take a breather in the bathroom.
Did Avery Becker take his phone with him to the bathroom?
No, Avery put his phone down on the table before he left to go to the bathroom.
When did you and Avery leave the Fry Shack?
Avery and I left right after he got back from the bathroom. We just decided that that wasn't our place to be.
Where was Avery's phone when you left the Fry Shack?
Well, since Avery had put it on the table before he went to the bathroom, then when he got back from the bathroom, he never picked it back up. I would assume that the phone was still at the Fry Shack table when we had left.
What happened the next morning? That would be March 6th, 2020.
I texted Avery just to confirm that he was going to pick me up for school, and he didn't respond.
Is it common for you to get a ride from Avery to school?
Yeah, he usually drives me to school, especially when we both have first period off, like we did that day.
Did Avery have his phone with him that morning?
No, I mentioned it in the car after he did pick me up that he hadn't responded to my texts, and that's when he realized that he didn't have his phone with him.
What did you do when you realized Avery's phone was missing?
Well, most of our classes were pretty dry that day. We didn't have anything super important going on, and his phone was really important to him, so we skipped school that day and we went to go look for his phone.
Were you able to find Avery's phone?
No, after looking all day and retracing his steps, we weren't able to find the phone.
Ms. Perkins, were you with Avery Becker for the majority of the day on March 6th, 2020?
Definitely. Avery and I were together for the better part of the day just because we were trying to find his phone and we were pretty unsuccessful.
Who could have seen you and Avery together that day?
Well, we had gone to the mall to retrace our steps, and we also went back to the Fry Shack to check with the evening staff to see if they had any knowledge of where the phone went. And when we got there, the mock trial team was there.
When did you find out that Mr. Brackman had been killed?
And I found out when everyone else found out, but it was definitely after Avery and I had looked for his phone all day.
Let's talk about Blair Rollins, Ms. Perkins. Who is Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins is a student at Colorado High School that we went to school with.
Who was Blair Rollins friends with?
I mean, as far as I could tell, Alex and Blair were very close friends.
Have you seen Blair Rollins since Mr. Brackman was killed?
I have not seen Blair, and to my knowledge, no one else has.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ms. Hepner, would you like to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Hello, Ms. Perkins. Let's start with your time on the mock trial team. You were on the mock trial team.
Yes, I was.
Coach Brackman was your coach.
Yes, he was.
You thought he was a mediocre coach.
Yeah, I think I did say that.
You would have rather spent time hanging out with friends than going to mock trial.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah,
Relevant.
Sorry, I didn't hear the objection completely.
My objection was to relevance, Your Honor.
Ms. Hepner, do you have a response?
Yes, I am laying foundation for my next question, as it is important to get the clear answer of whether or not she would rather spend time hanging out with friends than going to mock trial for my next question. It's very important, and my next question wouldn't be cohesive without it. So
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Thank you. You would have rather spend time with friends than going to mock trial.
I mean, the whole reason I joined mock trial was to spend more time with Avery. I really didn't have the same passion or talent as Avery did.
I'm sorry, I may have confused you. You would have rather spend time hanging out with friends than going to mock trial practice.
Yes, like I said, the only reason I joined was so that I could hang out with one of my friends.
You only went to the mock trial for the defendant, Avery Becker.
I would say so.
Coach Brackman was always giving Avery a hard time.
Yeah, they bickered a lot.
Avery's antics, such as being a little late to practice or not coming prepared, drove Brackman crazy.
Yeah, I never really understood it. It wasn't that big of a deal.
In your statement, you call this a feud.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
The feud bothered Avery.
I mean, yeah, Brackman was constantly getting on his case. It wore on him.
That's a yes.
Yes.
So, Avery often would pull pranks on the victim.
Yeah, he would.
Now, let's talk about the practice a month before regionals. You were there?
Yes, I was.
Avery came to that practice the most unprepared you had ever seen Avery.
Yeah, he really wasn't prepared. He just wasn't in the right headspace.
This made Coach Brackman heated.
Yeah, he always got mad at Avery for things like that.
So he moved Avery from A team to B team.
Yeah, he got really mad at Avery that practice.
So you quit mock trial altogether.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't have the same passion that Avery did.
To support your friend, Avery.
Yeah, I didn't have the same passion that Avery did, so I didn't feel like it was necessary.
Let's move on to the practice after. I'm sorry. For now on, a yes or no answer should suffice. Let's move on to the practice after regionals. You were not there to see the blow up between Brackman and Avery.
No, I was not.
But Avery told you what happened.
Yes, he did. He explained to me what happened.
Coach Brackman was giving Avery a hard time.
Yeah.
So Avery stormed out of practice.
As far as I know, yes, Avery did storm out of practice. It made him upset.
On the way out, Avery wrote on the coach's Porsche.
Yeah, he inevitably felt bad, but yeah.
So Brackman kicked Avery off the team.
Yeah, it made Brackman really upset, so Avery was kicked off the team.
Brackman would have rather not gone to the state tournament than let Avery back on the team.
I mean, I guess he really didn't like Avery.
Now let's look at how Avery tried to get back on the team after Avery was kicked off. You and Avery both talked about ways Avery could get back on the team.
Yeah, we were brainstorming.
Avery texted everyone on the team. You think even Alex Cifuentes?
Objection, Your Honor.
I mean-
Compound question.
What was the objection?
Compound question, Your Honor.
Ms. Hepner, can you restate that question?
Avery texted everyone on the team.
Correct, yes, he did.
You think even Alex Cifuentes?
I mean, Alex was on the team, so I would assume that Avery did text Alex as well.
That's a yes.
Yes.
Now, I want to talk about the fry shack on March 5th. Avery got upset.
Yeah.
And stormed off to the bathroom.
Yeah, he was upset, so we went to kind of cool down.
And as you previously stated, you said you knew for a fact Avery's phone was on the table. But in your statement, you say you think Avery's phone was on the table.
I'm pretty positive that he put his phone down before he went to the bathroom.
You still think. You don't know for a fact.
I mean, no, I guess I can't know for an exact fact, but I know I saw him put it down.
Is that a yes?
No, I can't know for an exact. Yes, I guess I can't know for an exact. Like, I can't know for sure, but I know I remember him putting it down on the table.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Now, directing your attention to the day of the crime, March 6th, Avery allegedly lost her phone.
I'm confused on which date you were talking about.
On the day of the crime, March 6th, Avery allegedly lost her phone.
Avery lost his phone at the Fry Shack the day before.
Okay, but on the 6th of March, Avery did not have her phone in possession.
Correct, he did not have his phone.
My bad. You ended up ditching school to find it.
Our classes were pretty boring and there wasn't anything interesting going on, so yeah, we did.
You say you spent the entire day searching for Avery's phone.
We did. We didn't think it would take that long, but man, it was definitely lost.
But you could have just used the iCloud website to find it.
I have an Android, so I'm not as familiar with the Apple technology.
So in your statement, you do not say you could have just used the iCloud website to find it?
I mean, I guess we could have, but I have an Android, so that wasn't my first thought.
Yet you did not.
No, I have an Android, so I didn't initially think to do it.
Lastly, back to your relationship with Avery. You testified you only went to mock trial for the defendant, Avery.
That's what I said earlier, yes.
You testified you quit the team for Avery.
Yeah, I didn't want to be on it without him.
You testified you tried to help Avery get back on the team.
Yes, I did.
You testified you ditched school to help find Avery's phone that was allegedly lost.
Yeah, he was my friend.
Now you're here providing an alibi for Avery.
Yeah, because he didn't do it.
Your best friend.
I would never break the law for him, but he didn't do it, so that's why
I'm sorry, that was not my question. Your best friend, you're here providing an alibi for your best friend, Avery.
Like I said, I would never break the law for Avery, but I would testify for him in court
Ms.
if I knew that
Perkins,
he didn't do
I'm just
it.
asking you if you're here providing an alibi for your best friend. If you feel the need to further speak on this, you may do so on redirect, but this is just a yes or no question.
I am providing an alibi for Avery as he didn't do it.
Your best friend.
He didn't do it. Yes, I'm providing the testimony.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Ferkus, do you have redirect for this witness?
Briefly, Your Honor. Ms. Perkins, can you please elaborate on why you are in court today?
I'm here in court today because I was with Avery for the better part of the day that Mr. Brackman was allegedly killed. So I know that Avery is not guilty of killing Mr. Brackman.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Ms. Hepner, I'll allow redirect if you have any questions.
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay, excuse me, I should have said cross. Okay. We'll allow a few seconds for the panelists to do their work, and then we'll move on to the defense's third witness. Okay, is it Miss Johnson that is questioning Blake Van Owen?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Go ahead, Miss Johnson, with your questioning Mr. Van Owen.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I ask for a brief time check? Thank you. May I continue, Your Honor?
Of course, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Do we have Mr. Van Owen?
Yes, her camera is on and her microphone is off. I cannot seem to hear her.
Is it Annalise?
Yes, Your Honor.
Annalise, can you hear us? Okay, can you unmute yourself? Okay, I think we've got her. Go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
I
cannot
interrupt. I still can't hear the witness, and I ask that timekeepers stop time running while we figure out this technical.
I agree. Still can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
May I continue?
Of course, go ahead.
Good morning. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Professor Blake Van Owen, VAN space OWEN.
What do you do for a living?
I am a private investigator, a professor, and an expert witness in police practices. I also teach a class on police procedures at Community College of the Rockies.
How many years of experience do you have in this occupation?
I have many years of experience in this occupation, and I have worked at the Aurora Police Department.
Have you testified as an expert witness in court before?
Yes, on more than 100 cases, actually.
Your Honor, may I have a brief moment? I'm having some technical issues and she's lagging a lot.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay, should we stop the time again?
Yes, please, Your Honor.
Okay.
Your Honor, am I lagging in your view?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, okay. Annalise, can you speak? I'm sorry, Professor Van Owen, can you speak so I can make sure that I can hear you?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, sorry. Yes, my apologies, Your Honor. May I continue?
Yes. Proceed.
What is your educational background?
I have my master's degree in criminal justice through Ashford University.
Which areas have you testified as an expert witness in?
My credentials have found to be sufficient enough for me to be an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
Your Honor, at this time, I move to tender Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in the field of police practices, crime scene reconstruction, and cell tower analysis on the grounds of her education, experience, and expertise.
Prosecution, any objection?
A brief voir dire, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Professor Van Owen, you have not provided a formal CV for the court.
I'm sorry, can you please elaborate as to what a CV is?
You don't provide a curriculum vitae or a resume.
I have provided my experience as well as my educational background in my affidavit.
So, but not a physical resume.
No, I did not include my resume.
And you think of yourself as a check on the power of the police.
Yes, I do. I believe that police systems are.
Thank you. You've answered my question. No objection to this witness being admitted as an expert in the fields of police practices, crime scene reconstruction, and cell tower analysis, so long as Professor Van Owen stays within that.
Okay, I'll find that she's an expert in those three fields. Ms. Johnston, you may continue questioning your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's start with the evidence found at the scene of the crime. Did you review Kyle Cusack's report?
Yes, I did. I had some issues with his analysis of the scuff marks, as well as the murder weapon.
What was the issue with Cusack's scuff mark analysis?
I mean, we can all see that there are scuff marks on the floor, but it's not clear that they came during that incident in particular. I mean, you can't carbon date scuff marks, so we don't have any clear evidence as to the occurrence happening during that incident.
What conclusions did Cusack come to based on the knife's position?
Cusack believes that the intruder and Brackman were engaged in a scuffle when the intruder stabbed Brackman in a downward angle, which would nick his aorta. In order for this to be true, however, the intruder would have to be larger than Brackman, and the ring videos don't seem to show that.
What is your opinion on this?
Well, I believe that the ring videos don't show the intruder to be as large as he would have to be, so it doesn't seem to hold up.
Your Honor, permission for the witness to view Exhibit 21.
Granted.
Let the record reflect I am showing the witness what has previously been marked as Exhibit 21. Professor Van Owen, do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I do.
What is Exhibit 21?
It is a photo of a hand holding a knife in a grip that appears to be very comfortable.
Is the exhibit you're reviewing a complete and accurate copy of the one you reviewed in your investigation?
Yes, it is.
How do you know?
Because it's the one I used during my examination.
Your Honor, I now move to admit Exhibit 21.
Prosecution, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, at this time, I'll admit Exhibit 21. Proceed.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to publish to the jury by sharing their screen.
Granted.
I now show you what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 21. What does this picture mean to the investigation?
Well, most people will hold a knife in the same manner just based on the knife handle construction, no matter how they're going to use it. And as I previously stated, in order for the intruder to hold this knife in this manner and stab Brackman in the way that he would have had to be much larger than the ring videos have shown.
Let the record reflect that I have stopped sharing my screen.
So, well, it's still up there.
One moment.
You may proceed with questioning, though.
Thank you. Now let's talk about the Ring Security app. What experience, if any, do you have with the Ring Security app?
I own this app myself, and I use it quite frequently.
What are some of the owner's abilities throughout the app?
One of the ones I use a lot is the ability to turn on and off notifications. I have a lot of people coming in and out of my house, and it doesn't make sense for me to get the notifications every single time.
Do you know if Mr. Brackman's security system had this option?
Yes, every system should have this ability.
Let's talk about cell phone towers. Where do you believe Avery Becker's phone was at the time of the murder?
Based on the cell tower analysis, it appears that his phone was in the general area of Brackman's home. However, cell tower data is different from GPS data.
How is GPS data different from cell tower data?
GPS data is very precise. It will give you an exact location at an exact time. Cell tower analysis is a little more vague. It will give you a general area because cell phones will connect to the tower that has the best connectivity. That tower might be 1 mile away, it might be right next to you, or it could be up to 15 miles away. So we have the general area.
Objection, narrative.
Ms. Johnston?
Your Honor, my witness is an expert and she's giving her expert opinion on what she knows is two different sets of data. And that is important to understand where Mr. Becker's phone was during the time of the murder.
I'll allow it. You may continue your answer.
As I was saying, cell phones will connect to the tower that give them the best connectivity. And that tower isn't necessarily right next to them, especially in an urban setting. So while we know that his phone was in the general area of Brackman's home, we can't pinpoint that it was at Brackman's home or right next to it.
Do you know if Detective Markowitz had access to the cell phone records?
Yes, he did.
What do you believe Detective Markowitz should have done with this opportunity?
He should have taken that opportunity and gathered all of the records for the days surrounding the murder instead of just the specific date and time that he did. He also should have looked into people who were connected to the victim and obtained their records as well.
What did police have access to at the time of the murder?
Police will always have access to Celebrite, which is a mobile forensic software that allows police to download the contents of any cell phone, which would include text messages.
What did the police do with this software?
Unfortunately, instead of using it, they just accepted the screenshots that Alex Cifuentes sent to them a day after they had talked with him.
Why is obtaining the actual contents more important than just the screenshots alone?
Well, everybody knows that you can pretty easily change up how screenshots look. There's all sorts of editing apps and technology that you can use. And the police had this technology available to them that would allow them to obtain the actual records, so they should have used it.
What do you believe that the police should have done with this information instead?
They should have used the Celebrite and obtained the correct evidence.
What other suspects did the police question?
The police didn't question any other suspects.
Who had more of a motive in this case than Avery Becker?
I believe Blair Rollins would have.
Who is Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins is the son of Jonathan Rollins, who was represented by Brackman in a murder case.
What evidence did you find of Blair Rollins' motive?
Well, Jonathan Rollins was convicted of murder, and as he was being led away from the court, he called out to Brackman, "I'll get you back." And that's a threat against Brackman.
What is Exhibit 22?
It is an audio recording of the court proceedings in which Jonathan Rollins was convicted.
How do you know?
It is the one I have reviewed during my examination.
Have you personally reviewed the audio labeled Exhibit 22?
Yes, I have.
To your knowledge, has a copy of Exhibit 22 been provided to the prosecution counsel?
Yes.
Is Exhibit 22 a complete and accurate copy of the audio you retrieved from the investigation?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I now move to admit Exhibit 22.
Prosecution? Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
I'll admit into evidence Exhibit 22.
Your Honor, permission for my co-counsel to share their screen and publish Exhibit 22 to the jury by playing the audio?
Granted.
Let the record reflect, I am playing Exhibit 22. Did you guys hear the audio or was that my end?
I didn't hear it. Is it only for 4 seconds?
Yeah, it's just very.
Okay. I didn't hear anything. Did anybody else hear? No.
I did not.
I'm Sorry, Your Honor, maybe try one more time.
Wow, you've really slowed down on my side, your audio and your visual.
Can you hear me all right?
Now I can hear you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, my co-counsel seems to have a problem getting the audio to work for Exhibit 22.
Okay, time has
If
stopped.
needed, Your Honor, I could screen share my end of Exhibit 22.
Thank you, that's very nice. Why don't we do that?
My apologies, Your Honor.
And let me play it.
Your Honor, were you able to hear it that time?
I could hear it. I couldn't exactly make out the words.
Professor Van Owen, can you please state what was said in that audio recording?
Of course. Said, I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
May I continue with my question?
Yes.
Let the record reflect I have stopped playing Exhibit 22. What do you conclude from this recording, Professor Van Owen?
Well, when Mr. Rollins said that, he was clearly very serious, and that could have been a credible threat.
Now, let's talk about the day Mr. Brackman was murdered. What else did you review during your investigation?
I obtained Blair Rollins' attendance records.
What did you find when reviewing Blair Rollins' school attendance records?
I found that he was absent on the day of the murder, which would have allowed him to go to Brackman's home.
What do you know about Blair's whereabouts today?
We don't know where he is or how to contact him.
What motive would Blair Rollins have to harm Mr. Brackman?
I'd say that watching your father be put away for murder is a pretty high motive, more so than just being cut from the mock trial team.
Professor Van Owen, in your expert opinion—
Objection. That was outside the scope of Professor Van Owen's expert opinion.
Sorry, which part was outside? Before the question?
Yes, her answer to the question.
Okay, Ms. Johnston, do you have a response?
Your Honor, may my witness rephrase the answer to that question?
Yes. Yes.
What motive do you believe Blair Rollins would have to harm Mr. Brackman?
In my opinion, I believe that his father being put away for murder might be a motive.
Professor Van Owen, in your expert opinion, do you believe Avery Becker killed Mr. Brackman?
No, I do not.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Prosecution, you want to proceed?
Yes, before I begin, Your Honor, may I get a brief time check?
Yes.
Okay. Professor Van Owen, you make a decent living.
This is my part-time job, so yes, I do get paid for it.
You charge $225 per hour of research.
All expert witnesses charge around that much, so yes, I do.
And $450 per hour of court testimony.
Yes, that's correct.
You have only ever testified as a defense witness.
I used to work in police work, and the prosecution typically will go with police. I would testify for them if they asked me to.
I'm sorry, that wasn't my question. You have only ever testified as a defense witness.
Yes, I have.
Okay, let's talk about this investigation. You know both of the prosecution experts.
Yes, I do.
You never went to the crime scene yourself.
No, I did not.
You only reviewed the police documents.
Yes, that's correct.
And you agree with CSR expert Kyle Kuzak that the evidence points to an intruder who broke into the home.
Of course I do.
It is possible the scuff marks by the back door were created in a struggle.
I would say it's possible, but not conclusive.
That's a yes.
Was that a question?
Yeah.
Sorry, can you repeat yourself?
It is possible the scuff marks by the back door were made in a struggle.
That's a possibility, yes.
And let's move on to the cell tower records. You heard Detective Markowitz testify Avery Becker's phone connected to the cell tower closest to the victim's house.
Yes,
During the time and day of the murder.
that's what the records show.
You criticize Detective Markowitz's use of the CDRs.
As I stated earlier, cell tower analysis is different from GPS data.
Yet you use those same CDRs.
I didn't have access to GPS data, so cell tower records were all that I had.
You used those CDRs to place Taylor at the mall and Fry Shack.
Yes, I did.
You did not obtain cell tower records of your own.
I should have, but unfortunately I did not.
Let's talk about the text messages. You say screenshots can be doctored.
Yeah, I would say so.
There's nothing in your statement, however, to show they actually were.
There's no evidence that they were, but there's no evidence that they weren't. It's a possibility.
You admit a conspiracy between Alex and Blair seems a bit too cloak and dagger.
Yes, I did say that in my affidavit.
Avery Becker was absent from school the day of the murder.
He was at the Fry Shack, or my apologies, the mall looking for his phone. So yes, he was absent from school.
Let's talk about Blair Rollins. You offer Blair Rollins as an alternate suspect.
Yes, the evidence seems to point to that.
You say Rollins was absent from school on the day of the murder.
Yes.
Based on school records you reviewed.
Yes.
School records you did not provide in court today.
No, I did not.
Blair's father threatened the victim.
Yes, as he was being put away for murder.
Nowhere in your statement do you say Blair ever threatened the victim.
No, because he didn't. His father did, which ties Blair to him.
So you assume like father, like son.
All that I'm saying is that Blair would have a motive and that his father's threat gives him that motive.
Once again, let me re-ask my question. You assume like father, like son.
Yes.
Thank you, Professor Van Owen. No further questions.
Prosecution, do you have any redirect?
Yes, brief redirect, Your Honor. Professor Van Owen, can you reiterate more on why you did not obtain the cell phone records yourself?
Yes, of course.
That's time.
Okay.
No further questions. The defense
Okay.
case.
I assume the prosecution doesn't have redirect on. There's no questions, so.
No, Your Honor.
We'll give the panel a few seconds to do their work, and then we'll proceed with the prosecution's closing argument. And who's doing the closing argument? Let's see. Ms. Mans-Jackson, are you ready to proceed with the prosecution's closing argument?
I am, Your Honor, but before I begin, may I reserve the balance of my time for rebuttal?
Yes.
Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury, Avery dealt with the devil and got burned. Though the defense claims a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, the prosecution has no weak link in their chain, the chain of evidence. Let's examine some of that evidence now, starting with the prosecution witnesses. First, you heard the words of Detective Jordan Markowitz, an expert. And Detective Markowitz did not enter into her investigation with any preconceived notions. She followed the evidence and eliminated all suspects but one, Avery Becker. Next, Alex Cifuentes, a friend of Avery's, testified to Avery's frequent violent behavior through words and actions. The vandalization of the car and the vicious language this witness testified to all show a pattern of extreme behavior from Avery. And finally, you heard from Kyle Kuzak, an expert witness. From his testimony, we ask you to remember that he, as an expert, solidifies and proves the event sequence that Detective Markowitz puts forth. Most importantly, he, as an expert, knows that Avery was the intruder. Conversely, the defense has myriad weak links, 3 of which are their witnesses, which I'll go over now. You first heard from Blake Van Owen, where the truth came out. Van Owen's involvement in the system may be lengthy, but she has professed bias against the police department. As a result of this resentment, Van Owen only ever testifies for the defense as a paid witness. That fact alone should discredit Van Owen, but moreover, Blake Van Owen was never at the initial crime scene the way that both experts who testified for the prosecution were. Her investigation, therefore, is neither comprehensive nor reliable. And then you heard from Taylor Perkins as well, who only further confirmed that Avery was angry. Taylor Perkins also confirmed she often rescues Avery in tough situations, of which this is one. You also heard from Avery himself. The defense would like you to believe that Avery Becker is a weak link because he is innocent, but rather, the defendant is a weak link in establishing the defense's case because he, before you today, verbally confirmed his patterns of anger. He acted upon his own personal hatred and resentment for Brackman 3 times, when he vandalized his car, when he broke into his home, and finally, when he stabbed the coach in the back. I implore you to remember the words that Avery told his own mother, that he would get back at Brackman if it was the last thing he did. Every single thing that Avery said he would do, both verbally and in text messages, he did. But he went even further than that because members of the jury, the defendant before you today is being charged with second-degree burglary of a dwelling and murder in the first degree. These are not light charges. These are significant and impactful. But there is a dead man and an evidence chain, if you will, leading directly to Avery Becker. Jury instruction number 2 instructs that you must use your common sense when noting the evidence. Members of the jury, I ask you to use this reason. The doubt needed to acquit Avery Becker must, by the jury instruction I just mentioned, be real and reasonable, not small or vague, and the evidence dissolves reasonable doubt. At the start of the case, my co-counsel Olivia promised the fulfillment of the prosecution's burden of proof. And in fact, the prosecution has done their exact jobs in proving to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery broke into his coach's home and the victim was murdered during this burglary. The prosecution has no weak links in their chain. As the jury, it is your moral and legal duty today to convict Avery Becker of murder in the first degree. Therefore, the prosecution urges you to find a verdict of guilty because Avery dealt with the devil and got burned. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mance-Jackson. Let's see, Ms. Miller, do you have the defense's closing remarks?
Yes, Your Honor.
Proceed.
Today, ladies and gentlemen, you have been presented with a heavy case. We have an innocent man standing before all of us, facing an accusation he absolutely does not deserve. The unfairness of this investigation has been made clear by the surplus of holes and misalignments in this case, exposed by the defense today. A chain is only ever as strong as its weakest link, and the prosecution's investigation is filled with weak links. To assume this high school student is capable of murder because of a few misunderstandings with his coach is a reach that could cost Avery his future and could cost the true justice that Mackenzie Brackman deserves. In this case, the police's focus on Avery Becker was that weak link. Instead of performing a thorough investigation and then choosing their suspect, they chose their suspect first thing and built their case around that. Today, you heard Detective Markowitz, confident in his 3-day training, use emailed screenshots as evidence in a murder case, screenshots that were sent an entire day after Cifuentes' interview. The credibility of these text messages would increase by tenfold had Markowitz downloaded the text messages off of Alex's phone using the software available to him. You heard Kyle Kuzak explain to you his investigative process, a process that, despite having looked well into Blair Rollins, didn't push him to act on it. Today, Kyle Kuzak testified that he would not comfortably say he was 100% certain about anything in the case. This expert detective isn't confident in his own investigation. You heard Alex Cifuentes go on about how he and Avery were such good friends, yet no other witness sees them that way. Has anyone considered the possibility that Alex and Blair had used the misunderstandings between Avery and Mr. Brockman to their advantage to distract from Blair and his involvement in the case? The police certainly didn't. You, however, should. You heard from Avery Becker, a talented and devoted student who wanted nothing more than to bring success to his mock trial team and ended up suspect for crimes he didn't commit. Today, did you hear any solid or direct proof that the person who broke into Brockman's home and murdered him was Avery Becker? Can anyone testify that they saw his face in the ring footage? No. So why was Avery the first suspect of the police? Regardless of the prosecution's false characterizations of Avery, you heard Avery Becker today when he told you of his efforts to apologize to his coach. The immense regret Avery felt is not characteristic of someone who would commit such a crime. Instead of taking things a step further, as the prosecution alleges, Avery took a step back, understanding that he took things too far in vandalizing Brockman's vehicle and doing whatever he could to make things right. You heard from Taylor Perkins, the very person who was with Avery on the day of the murder, and has told you exactly what happened surrounding that time. They were searching for Avery's stolen phone together, going from the Fry Shack to the mall, seeing the mock trial team that afternoon at the Fry Shack after Brockman hadn't shown up to practice. Today, the prosecution acted as though stepping down from mock trial and skipping school is on the same level as lying about murder. Here, the prosecution is jumping to conclusions, just as the detectives did throughout their entire investigation. Finally, you heard from our private investigator, Blake Van Owen, who explained how rushed this investigation was. You heard of the lack of support behind many of Cusack's claims, such as the fact that the prosecution argues that the murder weapon came from the knife block, even though the knife doesn't match the block, and didn't consider that the intruder could have brought the murder weapon with them. Take Alex Cifuentes as an example of how rushed this investigation was. The student couldn't even provide his phone on the day of his interview, a phone that supposedly held incriminating evidence. The detectives accepted screenshots, emailed screenshots. To them, that sufficed. In a case that meant everything for Avery Becker, a case that was supposed to be bringing justice to the murdered Mr. Brockman, hard, indisputable evidence was not a necessity. This here is one of the many weak links in this case. Take Blair Rollins as a second example. There is no doubt that Rollins has involvement in this case, not to mention a motive. And yet, Blair Rollins was not acted on in the slightest. Yet again, another weak link. How can you convict someone without absolute certainty, without each and every lead thoroughly investigated? A rushed investigation isn't going to cut it, especially a murder investigation, and one that involves high school students. The chain of this investigation became weak the second they latched on to Avery Becker. Each link that came after that had only one purpose: to strengthen the credibility of the police's choice of Avery as the only suspect. We have made this weakness clear to today. It has become beyond clear that those who ran this investigation did so in an unprofessional manner. The prosecution has the burden of proof. They must prove all elements beyond a reasonable doubt, and they have not met that burden. Did they make you believe that Avery Becker is the person behind that mask? The prosecution has failed to meet their burden to prove that he was. And now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is up to you to see through this inadequate investigation and find Avery Becker not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Prosecution, do you have a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution has no weak links, although there are myriad that the defense claims to bring up, such as the screenshots, which were actually verified by experts in the field, and they are thus a strong link, not a weak one. In addition, they claim the investigation was not comprehensive or reliable. However, that is exactly what we say about Blake Van Owen's investigation, as she was never at the initial crime scene and only ever testifies for the defense in the first place. Whereas the two experts testifying on behalf of the prosecution tell you not only that that investigation was in fact comprehensive and reliable, but also that that investigation followed a specific evidence trail that led directly to one key person, Avery Becker. Alternate suspects were put into question as well, but Avery Becker was ultimately the one that arose of the testimony of Kyle Cusack and Jordan Markowitz, because Avery dealt with the devil and got burned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, both teams. We're going to wait a few minutes for the panelists to make their final do their final work, and then we'll continue. Panelists, are you ready?
I am, Your Honor.
I am ready as well.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, everybody can turn on their video. Okay, great job, both teams. Thank you so much. Yeah, you guys did amazing. And really held your own when it came to the technical difficulties. So I really appreciate that. You know, your presentations really show that you guys know the material. And I know at this point, you've been working on this mock trial fact pattern for a long time, but you're still like listening to the questions, listening to the responses, and I really appreciate that. Do the panelists have anything that they'd like to share with the, any feedback that you have to share with the participants?
Well, I can go first. Oh, sorry, you can go.
Okay, I'll be quick. I just wanted to say how impressed I am with all of you guys. I know how much hard work you must have put into this. That was amazing. I know how hard it is to think on your feet when someone raises an objection and you have to, you know, justify it with your why you're submitting the information. And also dealing with the technical difficulties as they arise. Since COVID started, all of the hearings I've had to do have been remote by WebEx, and sometimes you just do have to figure it out. Just this morning, I was doing a hearing, and I organize volunteer attorneys, and one of the volunteers was having trouble connecting. So right as we were there, I just emailed him the link really quick so he was able to log in. Like, just dealing with those things as they come up and not forgetting what it is you're there to do. So great job, everyone.
Yeah, and I'll echo that as well. It wasn't too long ago I was in y'all's stage and as a high school and whatnot. Now I'm 3L in law school, and I've judged and been a juror and a witness for different competitions. And I'll say the talent here isn't much far off from that. Y'all are on a great pace. I thought overall you had really good form and really good. I thought in general, like y'all were pretty good with the interactions between each other. It didn't seem to get too uncivil. And obviously, this kind of world is a very much an argumentative area where sometimes feelings can get heated and whatnot. And I was very, very happy to see you was stayed respectful. I would say with y'all pretty much did a great job overall. Like some of the times there was definitely some objections that even for me or whenever I've done it, it's hard to overcome. But I think just trying to like keep thinking of ways of maybe rephrasing it, you could overcome some of those issues you had. But overall, just keep it up. And I thought y'all did a great job. And just know I don't know, back in high school, I always thought about law school, thought about that. It seemed so daunting. But just know, like, if a schmuck like me can get through it, I know y'all can too one day. So just keep it up and keep with it all. It'll only help you down the line.
So I don't have anything to add. I thought you guys did a really great job. I particularly loved the closings. Those closings were very well done. And that's not to diminish openings or direct or the witnesses' familiarity with the content. I guess I did have something to add. You guys were all just really good. It's clear that you deserve to be here. And I just wish you all a lot of luck, not only in the tournament, but really in your general life paths.
If I may interject, on behalf of both teams, we would really like to thank the presiding judge and you scoring panelists for volunteering your time and energy for this competition. The fact that we are still able to have a mock trial season and compete with everything that's going on means so much to us. Thank you.
Well, I have to say this, I'm a Social Security Administrative Law judge, and I would be happy to have any appear in my court as just claimants. But I also like to say this, you guys are on the forefront of technology. You are going to be of court systems. I apologize for my dogs. I'm fostering some, but I do want, I mean, you guys know the ins and outs of the law, but you also now have the added bonus of knowing the technology, knowing what works, knowing what could be better. And you're gonna, I mean, you have more.
You muted
Oh,
yourself.
sorry. In terms of technology, you guys have more information. So you're just gonna do so well out there. Would you like to see a puppy? Here's your reward for tonight. I hope this helps you decompress for the night and get ready for whatever journey